What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mr. CPA podcast. I am your host, Brian Credo, CPA, and on this podcast, we discuss self-improvement and all things accounting related. Today, we're going to actually discuss a really cool topic that I've actually been wanting to talk about for a long time, and that is why I think community college is a great option to take, especially if you're looking to get into accounting. And I'm going to kind of share my personal experience, give you my kind of story, go over the positive sides of going to community college and some of the downside that I also experienced in my own, career and student life. So I'll kind of give you guys a summary as to kind of my community college, how long it took me to transfer, why I went to community college in the first place. So let's start back in high school. When I graduated, thank God, not getting accepted to any school. I applied to a few schools. I guess I was, fulfilled the requirements to apply, but unfortunately, no one accepted me. I literally applied to, I think, a bunch of schools and no one accepted me. And, looking back, that's the best thing not going to a big school is the best thing that never happened to me. So when I graduated, as you know, if you guys don't know my story or not, I was not planning to go to college at all. I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And yeah, obviously that didn't work out. So my dad, being the man that he is, gave me an ultimatum and said, hey, look, you're either gonna, if you're gonna study and go to school, you can stay here rent free. And, but if you're not gonna go to school and you're just gonna work, then you're gonna pay rent. And I did not want to pay rent, so that was out of the question. So I ended up enrolling in my local community college, was down the street from, my parents' house at the time. And, as soon as I got there, luckily for me, there was like a chip change in my head. There was literally like I graduated high school and I became this new academic person because now, I've shared this before and maybe this is like a flaw that I have, but I have a very addictive personality. Like whatever I do. And that's just the way I am. And that can be a really good thing and that can be a really bad thing. But thankfully, I've harnessed that in my 20s and in my early life to, to something positive. So as soon as I graduated high school, I ended up enrolling in my local community college. I went in undeclared, didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I mean, I graduated at 17, so my birthday's in November. So I graduated at 17 in June 2009. So I didn't turn 18 till November 2009. Yeah. So I was 17 years old. And, if you're watching this video and you're around that age, don't feel like you need to have your life figured out because you don't. Okay. Trust me. You are going to change so much in the next few years. It's going to be incredible, especially if you follow this channel, if you follow the podcast and you implement a lot of the practices that I talk about, you're going to be a completely different person. So me starting at community college, I start there. I'm undeclared. I don't know what the hell I want to do really. So I always knew I kind of liked business, economics. Like I was kind of intrigued by it. And that happened my senior year in high school. I had an economics teacher that really kind of made me intrigued and made me want to learn more about economics. So I declared myself an econ major. And then thankfully, because of that, I had to take an accounting class. This happened at the end of my first year, second semester. So it was 2 semesters in a year. So I ended up taking my first accounting class. And if you've heard my story before, that class changed my whole trajectory of my life because I ended up taking my accounting class. There was accounting test that we took, and I ended up getting 100% on it. And the professor asked me after class if accounting was something I wanted to do. And I thought she was crazy because I'd never heard of accounting before. My parents were not accountants or CPAs or anything. So that's the first time I had ever heard about accounting, and my high school didn't offer it at all. So I didn't even know what the hell it was. So I thought she was crazy. There was no way I was going to do it. And lo and behold, that was like the first time I ever really did anything well academically in my whole life. Literally like kindergarten to 12th grade, like I never did well in school. So, being recognized and being acknowledged and her asking me if this is something I maybe potentially wanted to consider doing for a living and studying as like my major. I mean, I was like, you know what? I'm 18, 17 years old. Like, what do I have to lose? So I ended up changing my major. And thankfully, I'm so glad I did that because that happened at the end of my first year. And then that gave me such a drive. And I feel like a lot of the times, especially younger folk nowadays, if you don't have that North Star that I talk about all the time in my videos, if you don't have that goal kind of, some few years ahead of you, it's really hard to get up and do the things you need to do when things get tough, because they will and they are. It's just the way life is. Life is hard, man. It sucks sometimes. But me, declaring myself as an accounting major at the end of my first year really gave me that. If I already was super motivated, oh man, I was on another level now. Like all I did was study. All I did was wanted to do well in school so I can hurry up and transfer out. So I ended up doing my second year at a community college. And again, I knew I wasn't going to be an accounting major. So then I took managerial accounting my second year, and I was super pumped to learn about it. A lot different from financial accounting, because managerial accounting is a lot more cost accounting focused. So a lot more different, but I still wanted to learn it. And I love the topic and I love the subject. And it's something that I'm passionate about to teach it, as I do kind of here now on the other videos. So I ended up doing my second year, and, it's crazy because a lot of you, maybe you're aware of this or not, but there was a very, very, very large recession that occurred in 2008. And, the economy wasn't doing so well. And it's funny that now as an adult, being more, involved in the financial markets and all that stuff, I hear about this time period of 2008 to 2010 where it was tough to get a job. It was super hard. And, it impacted me in a way that they weren't allowing people to transfer mid-year anymore. So what ended up happening was I ended up doing an extra year at a community college because they weren't allowing mid-year transfers. Even though I was done already, they didn't allow me to transfer at the end of my second year. And I was taking a crazy amount of units every semester. So I finished up my second year, and I was hoping to transfer 6 months after the end of my second year. But since they weren't allowing mid-year transfers during that time because of budget cuts, because the economy was in shambles, it was just a mess. So they essentially told me, hey, you can't transfer in 2.5 years. Like, you need to do an extra, you either can just take a break from school for 6 months. So now again, I finished 2 years, and then now I'm starting the application process of, hey, I'm pretty close to being done. And even the reason that I didn't get to transfer in 2 years is because when I took my initial placement test, which is super important, super critical, I didn't try at all. Like, I was just like, whatever. I think I guessed on the whole thing. I was so bad. Like, I was such a bad freaking kid. And I guessed on the whole thing, ended up placing literally in the most remedial math and English you can. So starting in community college, I was already trying to climb my way out of a hole that I dug myself in. So I tested the most remedial math and English possible. So just that, I had to literally dig myself out of a hole. So that's what kind of held me back a little bit. But again, things happen for a reason. For whatever reason they happened. And I couldn't transfer. So at the end of my second year, they're like, hey, even though you're pretty much done with all your units by which would be my 2.5 years, and that would transfer to the university, I wasn't allowed to do that because of budget cuts. So again, blessing in disguise. Sometimes bad things happen to you, and there's sometimes the best thing that never happened, because thankfully I didn't transfer mid-year. Who knows what would have happened? But so I end up staying. And me being, again, in this mindset of I want to work hard, I want to do well, I'm going to kill it. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to let go of this momentum of doing well in school, because, again, I had never done well my whole life. And now I'm getting straight A's, and they're asking me to take a break from school for 6 months and do what? I was working at Chipotle at the time, so I worked my way through college. But at the same time, I just didn't want to go to work not to say I didn't just want to go to work at Chipotle, but I wanted to do more than just, go to work at my, job that was a means to an end at the end of the day. So and thankfully this happened because I ended up taking the same amount of units that I took in during my third year, first semester. I finished up that third year. My second semester, I didn't have to take any classes, but me being the hard-headed guy that I was, and I didn't want to lose the momentum, because momentum works in either way. It can go really good for you, or momentum can hold you really back. Because even in my own personal life, if I don't work out for a week, that first step of going back to the gym is a pain in the butt. But if I go to the gym, or I'm doing something consistently for a week, it's a lot easier. It's like a snowball effect. It can go either way. So I end up taking the same amount of units. My third year, second semester. Yeah, third year, second semester. I ended up taking all these crazy amount of units, and thankfully they were actually changing the unit requirements for the CPA exam during that time. So by the time it got to me having to actually sit for the exam, I didn't have to get a master's degree. I didn't have to go to get extra units. I had gotten them prior to that literally third year that I was at a community college, because I had to, because they weren't accepting transfer students. That was the biggest blessing I could have ever received, because I didn't have to go spend more money to take classes. By the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was essentially completely done with all the units that I had to complete. So essentially, it took me 3 years to transfer completely to a university. And then by the time I got to university, it took me 2 years and I was pretty much done with my bachelor's degree. So I graduated at 21, 22 years old. And that's kind of how it happened. And I am so thankful for the way everything happened. And again, it goes back to what I kind of always preach on this podcast, is that, working hard sometimes, even though you can't see the benefit immediately. I'm so glad I didn't take that 6 months off during my third year, during the time that I was eligible to transfer and they weren't accepting people, because who knows, maybe I wouldn't even have been able to transfer to sit for the CPA exam after I got my bachelor's degree. I would have to go back for more units, and it would have just been a pain in the butt. So the way everything worked out was truly a blessing. And now that I kind of went over my own experience and how long it took me to transfer from community college, I want to kind of go over the positive side of going to a community college. And one big positive side of going to community college is I was able to stay home. And I am so thankful, because I'll be honest with you guys, there is no way I was ready to completely move out of my parents' house at 17, 18 years old. I was, first of all, not responsible enough. I probably would have thrown a party like every day. I was just not in the right mental state, and not in I just wasn't responsible at all. I was still a child. And I know now, you maybe should be more grown up by 17, 18, but I wasn't. Completely, I was not. And I'm so thankful I didn't move out when I was that young, because there's no way I was emotionally, financially, spiritually, I was just not ready to leave my parents' house at that age. I just wasn't. So again, that's me personally. I just wasn't. And to me, it gave me a few more years at my parents' house to kind of develop myself as a student and be able to hold myself accountable, because I still had parents to come home to every night that, I couldn't be getting home at whatever time I wanted. I couldn't be bringing people home all the time. I couldn't throw parties in my room. So, thankfully that gave me an extra level of discipline, or extra level of accountability, which were my parents, and my parents are very old school traditional. So in that aspect, being able to stay home for that extra few years really, really benefited me. Second thing that I think is really, really what I think is a positive to community college, it is really cheap and affordable compared to a lot of the big universities. I am so thankful. Going to a community college is the main reason I was able to work myself through school and not graduate with a massive amount of debt. So by the time I graduated my bachelor's degree and I had a full-time offer at a firm, I literally, although I graduated with zero, I didn't graduate in the negative, because that'd be like working yourself out of a hole, which unfortunately I see a lot of students get into, is that they graduate, they have a great job, start coming out of college, but they're $100,000, $50,000 in debt for accounting. I just find that really hard. That ROI, you will get it eventually, but I just think it's a crime at this point to be charging students hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a degree, where even accounting, you're gonna get at a firm your first year, you're maybe gonna make $60,000, $65,000. That to me it's just insane, and it's crazy. So in that aspect, I think community colleges are amazing, because especially those first 2 years, 90% of the classes you take are not going to help you with accounting. The two classes that you take during your community college years are financial accounting and managerial accounting. Out of the plethora of other classes I had to take, those are the only two that really helped me with my accounting degree, realistically. So in that aspect, I think being cheap and affordable was a super, super great benefit that really helped me out. And, if I would have started with a bunch of debt, I probably wouldn't have this duplex in the studio that I'm currently filming in right now. So that's a really big positive, I think, of starting a community college. Another thing that it got me used to working hard. Again, I think the big thing for me was I was able to stay home, so I had a certain level of accountability that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. And mentally, there was no way I was responsible enough to have my own dorm and live on my own and make my own complete decisions at the time. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't freeloading or living off my parents, but at the same time, I still I couldn't be doing whatever the heck I wanted at my parents' house, right? So that gave me a certain level of accountability and certain rules and guidelines. Just not that my parents were telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that, but just me out of respect for them and being in their house, I knew that I, couldn't do certain things, and not that I would want to, but I just knew that I had that extra level of accountability. So it kind of got me used to just going to school, go to work, go to sleep. Go to school, go to work, go to the gym, go to sleep. I got me used to working hard, and I am super grateful for that. Another thing, there weren't too many distractions. I know a big aspect of college is that, it's social and you get to meet people and you can join fraternities and sororities, and that's great and that's awesome. But me personally, there's no way at 18 years old that I should have been joining a fraternity. I would have not gone to school. I would have been like high school all over again. Literally, I wouldn't have gone to school. I just would have gone to my friends, been with girls, and just all that stuff, because it's there and it's tempting. And in that state and that state of mind that I was in, there's no way I was responsible enough to take that on. So I think a positive for me was that there wasn't many distractions. If community college, a lot of people live in the area. They're all commuters. So people typically go to work, go to school and leave. And that was pretty much me. If I didn't go to school and leave, I would literally go to school and go to the library by myself. So in that aspect for me, in the state of mind that I was in, and me being kind of still a degenerate in a way, and kind of getting out of the old habits that I built for literally 18 years of my life prior to community college, I'm so thankful that I didn't have those distractions that maybe a lot of my other peers had that went to these huge schools that were my age and now have this plethora of things in front of them, and they also have to manage school, and some people can't do that at that age. And thankfully for me, I wasn't ready yet. There's no way I was ready to have maybe that much temptation in front of me to do a bunch of other things and not be, and still go to school and work hard. So thankfully for me, not many distractions. I'd literally I'd go to school, I'd go to work at Chipotle, I'd go to the gym when I could, and which was most of the time, thankfully, and then I go to sleep, and that was literally my life. So thankfully, those were the big positive sides for me of going to community college. Now the downside of community college, and it's kind of like a dichotomy, because I just said I didn't have distractions and I was able to stay home and all that. But I think a downside for me is that it was really hard to make friends. Again, in a community college, a lot of people are commuters, so no one really stays. There are some clubs and organizations, but in my aspect, a lot of people that go to community college are either going part-time or they're working, or a lot of them aren't, necessarily, just putting their head in the books. A lot of them are, unfortunately, in my own experience, a lot of the people that went there were going to school just to say they were going to school. I remember I had friends that went to community college at the same time I did, and a lot of them were at a community college for 6, 7, 8 years. Some of them till the day. I'm 30 years old now. I still have some friends that are still, going to school and figuring it out. And, it's unfortunate. And that's just kind of the reality of things. So again, it's just hard to make friends, because, everyone's just a commuter. So there's not really much of a community feel, at least I thought. I didn't, and maybe it's because I didn't try to make friends. I just kind of was so focused on my studies, but yeah, it was really kind of hard to make friends. A second thing, I feel like the people at community colleges, unfortunately, again, this is my own personal experience. I could be completely wrong, but it was really hard to find people that were kind of motivated like I was. I felt like I was kind of, out of many people in my classes, I was always kind of the one that wanted to just study and work hard. And again, a lot of the people that went to community college, at least the time that I went, they weren't really that motivated. I didn't feel I felt like it was just kind of a means to an end for them. I didn't feel like they had a goal really necessarily in mind to, study something or transfer in 2 years. When I got to community college, I freaking knew I'm getting the heck out of here. I want to transfer as soon as possible. And that's what I had going for me. And I feel like when I was there, a lot of the people didn't have that drive, or they were just kind of like going through the motions and taking classes and figuring it out. And, oh yeah, I'll figure it out. There's nothing wrong with figuring it out, but you got to have some type of plan or idea of working hard or taking as many units as you can. So then you can figure out in the process of you working so hard that you're like, hey, I took that. That seems pretty cool. But just going through the motions of saying you're going to school because you're going to school, I feel like a lot of the people that I encountered kind of went through that. And there's, again, there's certain people that I knew personally that are either still at a community college or maybe barely getting wrapped up. Like I was one of the very few that transferred that quickly. And I remember when I would tell people, oh yeah, I'm transferring, next year, or I'm transferring, next semester, they'd be like, what the heck? We started at the same time. How'd you get done so quick? And I'm just like, dude, you got to have a plan. Like I had a plan 6 months in. As soon as I met with a career advisor, like, hey, what do I have to do to get the heck out of here? Because I want to transfer as soon as possible. So in that aspect, I felt like it was really hard to find friends that were motivated like I was. I feel like a lot of people were just going there to please their parents or please someone else, or just to kind of get by and say they were going to school. And I didn't really feel like a lot of people had a vision for themselves, unfortunately. And I feel like the last downside of the community college, I feel like I was a loner a lot of the time. Again, maybe I did this to myself, retrospectively thinking about it. Maybe I did it to myself, but I feel like I would go to school, I'd go to work at Chipotle, I'd go to the gym, and I'd go to sleep. I don't know how many times I can repeat that, but I literally did that monotonously my whole community college experience, which was, again, 3 years. I just kind of felt like a loner a lot of the time, but maybe at the same time, this downside of feeling like a loner helped me grow a lot, because prior to that in high school, I always had friends around me. I was part of the soccer team. I always, was hanging out with girls and new friends and all that stuff, and it was great, but I had never had a period in my life or point in my life prior to that. Again, 18 years in, where I just kind of was alone and no one was really there to kind of hold my hand through it. And then, my parents being first generation, my parents being immigrants to this country, they didn't understand how the college process worked. They didn't tell me, my dad wasn't there to kind of guide me through. He told me to work hard, and get it done, but wasn't there to really guide me and tell me to take this class and do this and do that. So I kind of had to figure it out on myself. And in that aspect, retrospectively, during the time, it was a downside because I kind of felt like I was alone. Like I was kind of a loner in a sense, but I feel like looking back retrospectively, now being the 30-year-old man that I am, I feel like that really made me grow a lot. I feel like that was the few years that really changed my whole trajectory of my life and what made me who I am today, and made me the strong-minded person that's able to get through certain situations, whether I be at work or personally or in my relationships now. So in a sense, going to community college really, really shaped me and really formed me, because those first 3 years were very difficult, because I had a job for the first time. I was rolling burritos, I was washing dishes, I was doing all these things. I was going to school like super full time. I was paying for college. I remember I'd freaking work months on end, and then, my books would come due, or I'd have to sign up for classes again. And at the time, it really sucked, because I would work all these hours and work weekends and all these things to then just have it all go to books and my classes. And during that time, it was really hard for me to see the ROI long term, but I knew that I had a certain vision of myself that, during that time, it was just, I want to get my accounting degree. I didn't even know what the hell public accounting or partner or CPA was. I knew I wanted to get my accounting degree, and I wanted to be, an accountant at the time. So again, all in all, I think going to community college was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think if you don't really necessarily know what you want to do yet, or maybe you want to do accounting, I think community college is probably the best thing for you to do, because it's really hard for me to justify you taking on massive amounts of debt to start at a job where you're going to make $60,000, $70,000. I just feel like community college sets you up for success. And if you're like me and you weren't really ready for mentally, emotionally, you weren't really ready or to take on the responsibility of living on your own, having the temptation of, having your own dorm and moving out of your parents' house and all that stuff, I think going to your local community college is probably the best thing you can do to help you, give you that extra year or two to develop yourself, to grow, to mature, and not take on a massive amount of debt while doing that. So, all right, guys, it's going to be it for the podcast today. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please make sure to shoot me a DM, leave me a comment below. Until next time, work hard, dress well, peace.